Hi, good morning, everyone. Ed Bixby here from the Global Green Burial Alliance, and this is Spotlight Now. Today I'm here with DJ Wright, who's a licensed funeral director and the owner of Wright and Ford Funeral Home in Flemington, New Jersey. A graduate of Drew University with a background in psychology, philosophy, and French, he completed a funeral service education at the American Academy McAllister Institute in New York City. Throughout his career, he has focused on providing compassionate, community-centered funeral care dedicated to traditional values, modern concepts, and the Golden Rule service. DJ has also held multiple leadership roles within the New Jersey State Funeral Directors Association and the Tri-County Funeral Directors Association. So welcome, DJ.
Good morning, Ed. How are you?
Doing great. Not too often. I know a lot of people within the movement, but I've had the pleasure, for our viewers to know that I've worked with DJ on several occasions. And I will say he puts his all into it. His customers most certainly love what we do. And I'm glad we can have him here because, DJ in the state of New Jersey, I consider you certainly at the top of the list when it comes to people who really are, champions of the natural burial and the eco-friendly funeral option.
Well, I appreciate that, Ed, and I consider, working with you a privilege because I always learn something. And, you were doing my intro and I was thinking back, McAllister, that's a long time ago. And I don't think we even talked about green funerals in mortuary school back then. I don't think that was a thing. It was, how you carry a casket and how you lock a casket and how you move a casket and how you don't say certain words and how you never cry, which, things I disagreed with back then being a first generation funeral director. But, I'm looking now in New Jersey as we're getting close to, natural organic reduction and other major changes and how many phone calls I get on a weekly basis about, green and what it means. And again, how many people are actually uneducated but want to learn. It's something that's changing so dramatically, and you guys have always been on the forefront. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're really glad to have you, DJ. And I know that you've got quite a history, I'm sure, of the funeral home and how it came to be. We'd love to know that and a little bit about the
Sure.
range of services that you guys provide at Wright and Ford.
Sure. So it's been a decade since I bought the Fords out. He was an only child, was looking to transition the business. I had worked at another area funeral home for 15 years and really loved this community. And when you practice funeral service the way I do, which is 24/7 every day of the year, I didn't want to leave the community. When the option was presented to me, it just worked out well. And the best part about owning your own business, especially after being in the industry for almost 2 decades, was I knew what I liked, I knew what I didn't like, and I kind of understood listening to families what they were looking for. And the best part about being your own boss is you can try different things and see what works and what doesn't. So, like therapy dogs, I was the first New Jersey funeral home to offer a support dog program at no charge. Just one very simple example. People come to the funeral home all the time and they say it's so bright and beautiful because they were used to dark, old, dank funeral homes, and we ripped the curtains off the wall. We made everything bright. Again, another example of just something simple that I noticed people wanted to change. And then all of a sudden, it was, well, can you bury mom in the backyard? And well, no, but let's have a conversation on why you want that and what we can do to accomplish that. And then I also noticed people were um, wanting cremation because it was cleaner, more eco-friendly in their mind compared to a full embalming and a casket and a vault and concrete and all that stuff. Okay, no problem. But there were no roots. They weren't married to the local cemetery like they had been for 100 years. So all of a sudden, Steelmantown, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from my location here, and was really the only green cemetery around in New Jersey. Well, that wasn't too far. And then the Catholic Church put in a green cemetery in northern Jersey, so a lot more people started to understand what green might be. And we live in a very unique area where we're an hour from Philly, we're an hour and a half from New York, we're 25 minutes from true suburbia, and 5 minutes to the local farm stand where you'll get the fresh vegetables around. So we have all different kind of people in the sense of what they're used to and what they are experiencing in funeral services. So all of a sudden we have Princeton, which is about 25 minutes away. A lot of the professors and ultra intellectuals really know about green services from what they practice on campus there. And they started calling up and what do you offer and what do you offer? And then we had a local cemetery want to put in a green section, which they did. And so that really got it even more going. And I just started putting some stuff up on our website. I started doing some things with our blogs, just about what green means and how you can incorporate green things into a traditional funeral, why you don't have to be embalmed, but you can still have a viewing. Why, you can have quote unquote a Jewish casket and bury it even if you're not Jewish, because a Jewish casket really is just frankly a green casket without a Jewish star on top. And we started talking about all those things and incorporating them into our daily work. And it was really about giving our families back the ownership, because see what happened in my world and why I think funeral service kind of became on the decline about 10 years ago was because we took so much away from our families, in the sense of they had no idea what they were paying us for. People have no idea how much goes involved into this ministry. It is intense. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week, every day of the year. But we hid so much of it from our families. So if a family wants to help me dress mom or dad, come on down. If they want to help put them in the casket, come on down. We hid too many things. And so starting to put it back into the hands of our families, I think really gave them, number one, healing, which is what I strive for on everything we do. But it also gave us an opportunity to explain to them about some of the more natural options and how it could be beneficial to them. And so many of them actually want it. We weren't listening, and that was the problem. So I just opened my ears a little bit more and started educating our community. And here we are having this conversation.
Well, absolutely, DJ. And that's how it seems to happen. Most stories end up that way. In particular, for any of our viewers who are within the funeral world, as a provider, you should listen to DJ's words carefully, because, this is something that really is very important in today's day and age. People really, we need funeral providers. We need the assistance. And when families realize how differently, a new perspective can be, they fall in love really truly with the provider themselves. I mean, I see it with your family, CJ. I mean, you can see that without a doubt that they not only appreciate everything that you're doing, but they really see the value in what you've done for them. I mean, that's what's so critically important. And you covered a lot of things there that I was going to talk about. Community need and the types of offerings. But I think what's probably most important in this conversation is, what is the impact? You've conducted, many of these, and how would that vary? How does that different from, a traditional service?
So, first, I think my colleagues need to understand, and this was the fallout, because remember, I remember quote unquote the golden age of funeral service was brown and mahogany caskets going out the door to where we are now, which is still the golden age of funeral service, because we're serving families. And what people don't realize is, even I remember when they heard cremation, some of the old timers, they don't want to spend any money. There's nothing to do with it. I don't look at how much they're spending. I look at what can I do to help your heart heal. The rest is going to fall into place. Financially, I have a big building. I have many cars. I have the same upkeep as anything else, and my bills are paid. And that means, and I'm very fair in cost, mind you. But we need to stop hearing, cremation or green burial. They just want to dump mom out. Well, no. They need the same amount of love, the same amount of healing, the same amount of respect that anybody does that's lost somebody they love. They just want to do it a certain way. And isn't that our job? Because for too many years, we told them that this is what you have to do, this is how you have to do it, and this is why. Well, why? There's no reason you have to do it that way. We had a funeral with you a couple weeks ago. It was probably one of the most, I'm going to say, one of the most beautiful green funerals I have ever been a part of. It lasted 2 days. We were at the cemetery from 1 p.m. until dark, and then the candles came out. We were there for a little while longer. And I got to thank you, Ed, because you and your team didn't flinch. You didn't bat an eye. You were there for the long haul. You were just happy that that family was getting what they need. And they hand sewed their own shroud and dyed it in organic dyes. The dad made a carrying board with biodegradable glitter. I learned something new that day. I didn't know biodegradable organic glitter existed, but it does, and it sticks to your suit. But you can get it off after a couple washes. But they were so integral in that service. They got the mom and the friend got in the ground and physically put the body in. And mind you, the mom had cared for her daughter for 14 years with ALS. Everybody stood around. They sung songs. They helped fill the grave in. They all brought stones, which was an idea that I had gotten from Ed years ago. They all brought stones and from their own walks of life. And at the end, they surrounded the grave with stones to leave a piece of themselves with the person. That service showed true healing. Everybody walked away from that saying, "Oh my God, we've never experienced anything like that." And it wasn't praised for me. It wasn't praised for Ed. It wasn't praised even for the young woman we buried. It was, "Oh my God, we got healing. Our hearts are moved forward in a good direction in a way that no other funeral has ever provided for them." And that's what we do. And I happen to think it was because they were such a part of that green, organic, natural burial. They were hands on. They were in it. They were singing songs from the beginning. They were help carry her all the way from the hearse, the couple 100 feet. We passed her body to each person to carry her all the way to the grave. They felt like they did something that helped her transition from death or from life to death, and they got hope. And walking away with hope from something where you're burying a 43-year-old young girl who you know was stricken with ALS for 13 years, to walk away with hope, that's a pretty darn successful funeral in my book. And everybody asks me why I'm smiling all the time. It's because I'm so happy that we are able to give people hope in a world that doesn't seem to strive towards that sometimes. I know that was a lot.
No, what it was a beautiful description, and I think that's what the viewers need to know. That we live in a world and in a movement that has a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different characters. And we have
Yeah.
the cemeterians, and we have the hospice workers, and the hospital workers, and the funeral directors, and the death doulas. But at the end of the day, the tie that bonds is the humanity that we receive. The final disposition of these individuals really is the final act of kindness that you can bestow upon them. And I think you hit the nail on the head, DJ, and I appreciate you explaining that to the viewers, is that there's a lot of healing. This cathartic event really brings them not only closer to the individual who they've lost, but to death and dying itself. It's not nearly as scary, as what people want to believe that it is. So it's very impactful. And I think that's what the viewers, the providers, if you've never been to one, it's really hard to capture that,
It is, and my fear and what I've seen, and I beg my colleagues, if you are watching this, educate yourself. Don't get scared of it, but don't give out wrong information either, and just say, "Well, we don't do it, so you have to do it this way." No, you can get a green casket in time for the funeral. You can get a shroud in time for the funeral. If you aren't sure of something, talk to a guy like Ed. Call somebody like myself or somebody else who truly understands what natural, what green means. Because as Ed just said, there are so many definitions out there. There are so many things. Am I an expert? Absolutely not. But it comes down to perfect example. When somebody comes into our funeral home, I don't wash them with the soap that I buy from Costco. I have soap, handmade organic soap from a local convent that I buy, that I keep especially for these situations. Okay. There's a difference. What you do when nobody's watching is just as important as what you do when somebody is watching. So you need to understand that what you do on the front side facing the families and what you do on the back side, it all matters. No, you can't just put a little bottle of cavity in them just to kind of tide it over because no one will know. You can't do that. There are other natural ways to keep the body from doing things that you and I are trained and ingrained to never let a family see. Well, guess what? If you talk to them and explain to them about the natural changes that occur when somebody dies, if they want natural, then they will understand that. And if you explain it in a way that doesn't make it gruesome, which it's not, then they will understand why they can do and why they can't do certain things. But you have to talk to them about it. I think, Ed, and you've probably seen this over time, people are so afraid to talk about certain things surrounding this. And it kind of scares me because they give out the wrong info. You've probably seen that a lot, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And transparency is key. What I always tell my family members when they ask if they can care for their loved one in this way without a funeral director, depending on where they live in certain states, certainly that can be done. But at the same time, you really want this to be a memorable experience. So you do want the assistance of a professional who understands these things because there are things that are less than memorable, of course, that we know that can occur, but that is natural, like you just mentioned.
Yeah. Well, I set ground rules too. I say, look, I get it. I'm not here to be in because there's been a long-standing, perception that a death doula and a funeral director can't get together. Well, that's wrong, in my opinion. I can get along with anybody, anywhere, anytime. But when a family comes in and they want certain things, I am very direct. I set ground rules. I explain why I exist and why I'm important, and at the end of the day, why I hope a family will see that by the end, and how I work with all these other people in an open way. And that simply is to help you get your loved one where they need to be within the confines of the law and all the other psychological, sociological things that people don't realize we are a major part of and a major director of.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's like we had mentioned, so many moving parts, but we really, the impact that can be had is so great that, to the viewers, to the consumer, to the funeral director, certainly, always consider an eco-friendly funeral option, but always respect the options that people choose as well. Because in life, we live in the United States of America. You have the right of choice, and I think you never would want to make someone feel bad about a choice. So whether it be a traditional cremation, an eco-friendly funeral option, the I think the key here is, like you said, DJ, take the curtains off the windows, make it more about life and living the light, and you will be transformed, in many ways. So, it's always exciting and great for me to be able to have someone like yourself on our show because you get it, you understand it, and you're willing to share. And that's what's really most important. We need to share this information with our colleagues, with our families, for sure.
But I think there's a perception that you have to be a certain religion or not. You have to be a certain ethnicity or not. You have to be a certain socioeconomic class or not in order to do natural or green. And that's not true. I, um, I had this. We had an African American family whose matriarch was close to 100, and she chose a green option, and we had probably 55, 60 people there, and they asked me to be the celebrant, so that was fine. And they all come from a fairly religious Southern Baptist type mantra, and none of them had ever been to a green or natural burial, so they didn't know what to expect. I had explained to them what we would do, how they could get involved, whatnot. And at the end of it, I literally took a group of people who only knew open casket church burial, and we got 4 or 5 prearrangements out of that for the green option because they absolutely fell in love with it. They all bought around their grandmother and great grandmother. We had a couple other people who said, DJ, can we do an open casket church and then be buried? And I explained to them why they couldn't have a metal casket in this particular area of the cemetery and whatnot. So they bought close by because they still wanted that open option, but they wanted to be near with their family. But that was okay too. And it was so interesting to see a group that had never experienced it, how many of them, and it wasn't just the younger generation, mind you, there was some older folks in that group and some younger folks in that group that chose the green natural option because it was just something for them that they had never been exposed to. And that was a really eye opening moment for me because it was a group that, you would think wouldn't do that because they only knew one way. That with one matriarch, it changed a whole generation.
Absolutely. And it seems to happen that way quite often. I always say that the best advertisement, if you're ever fortunate enough, and no one's ever fortunate to be at someone's funeral because they
Yeah.
passed away, but to experience that really truly opens the eyes of everyone that attends. And I think that experience happens all the time. It knows no boundaries. And that always brings me to my favorite part of what we do. And DJ, I know that you're passionate about this, so I can only imagine what your answer may be. Where do you want to see Wright and Ford Funeral Home in the next 5 to 10 years? So where is DJ going to be in 10 years time? I think I already know where.
In 10 years' time, I hope, wow, I hope that we've reminded everybody how important it is when somebody dies to stop, remember, and celebrate that person's life. Because all too often, we are just little Gina has ballet practice, Jimmy has soccer practice. We'll do Grandpa's funeral next summer. What? It baffles my mind because that is the surest way to create complicated grief and to create problems for everybody in that family for the rest of their life. What we do at the moment of death will affect our psychological well-being for the rest of our life. And if we do it wrong, we will screw people up for the rest of their lives until they die. That's the reality. So my hope is that I have educated people on the value and importance of caring for the dead. And I'm a firm believer that we need to get people more involved, hands on, which I would love. And I would love to see so many more natural options. I think it's a very hands on way to do it. I would love if there was a way to make it a little bit more affordable. Right now, natural organic reduction, for example, is being introduced in New Jersey. It is going to be more expensive than it would be for me to do a green burial at one of your cemeteries, which are about 45 minutes to an hour from my location in Philadelphia, the Poconos and Steelmantown. It's still less expensive for me to do a green burial than that. So I just wish people get educated about all the different options. So in 10 years, I hope we have a truly understanding populace that comes to me ready to celebrate the heck out of their loved one, comes to me with open arms, not as an agent that they just have to give money to who's going to suck their, the blood sucking vampire, because that's not what we are. I hope they see me as a colleague, as a friend, as somebody who wants to help them get their loved one where they need to be and their hearts on a healing path. That's where I really hope this profession goes.
Well, it's a lovely vision, and I think it's heading that direction, DJ. And with people like yourself, I think there's no doubt that it will, because caring for loved ones, caring for families at this time is the highest and greatest honor. And I think the funeral profession, in many ways, because of years of fear and neglect and things
Mm-hmm.
like that, has received a reputation it didn't deserve. And I think
100%.
someone like yourself showing people a new way will indeed bring things back to the way I feel like they should be. A good reset.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
No, education, education, education. We need to educate ourselves. We need to be more open to it. We need to educate the hospice workers. We need to educate the death doulas. We need to educate all our allied professionals. I would love every cemetery to have quote unquote a green area. They all have a spot they can set aside to. But again, doing it the correct way. There is a correct way and there is a wrong way. You can't half it. Like I tell my families, you can't take a pen and a piece of paper, put this, and have me stick it in with Grandpa because this is ink. This is stuff that really can't go with the body because it's not organic. So we really need to understand what truly is natural and green and stick to the same script that we're all paying attention to the same things because again, if I'm doing it one way and my colleague in our way is doing it slightly different, and then it's going to really mess things up because people expect different things and they go from one to another. Well, why did they let me do it, and why did this one let me do it? There is a green, natural way, and I think your website, and I will call out your website, has a lot of good resources. Destination Destiny does a great job at educating, and I think we all need to do that. We need to share each other's posts and really educate our communities about what's out there.
Absolutely, DJ. Well, we here at the Global Green Burial Alliance, we really appreciate all that you do. I encourage all of our viewers to visit, DJ's website, rightfamily.com,
Yep.
and learn a little bit about what he does and and because we're a big family here, and we have no boundaries. Take a page from DJ's book. If you have a local funeral director and you live in Seattle, Washington, or wherever you may live, and you'd like them to take a look at this, have them take a look at, what DJ's done, what everyone has, tried to do within our movement and inspire them possibly to make a change. So,
Yeah, and I'm open to talk to anybody around the United States. I love speaking about this because guess what? If we don't accept this, right, it's another nail, not even in our coffin, because we probably won't have coffins then. But we are killing our profession, and a profession that is sorely needed. People need us. The issue is they don't realize, it's nice to WebMD it, right? Everybody wants to figure it out, but eventually you need to go to the doctor. People think they can do what we can do. They can't. And I don't mean that disparagingly. We are a necessary part of our society in the best way possible, but we're needed. And again, like a good doctor listens, maybe we need to listen a little bit more to what our families want and need and deserve, and the world will be a better place.
Absolutely. Wise words, DJ. So
Thank you, buddy.
thanks for joining us today, DJ. We really appreciate it. And
Appreciate
again, viewers, learn more by visiting rightfamily.com. And, it's been a pleasure, DJ. And everybody,
Always,
we'll see
Ed.
you at the next Spotlight.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.